Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 232. Chapter 232. Helene understood that the question was very simple and easy from the ecclesiastical point of view, and that her directors were making difficulties only because they were apprehensive as to how the matter would be regarded by the secular authorities. So, she decided that it was necessary to prepare the opinion of society. She provoked the jealousy of the elderly magnate and told him what she had told her other suitor. That is, she put the matter so that the only way for him to obtain a right over her was to marry her. The elderly magnate was at first as much taken aback by this suggestion of marriage with a woman whose husband was alive as the younger man had been. But Helene's imperturbable conviction that it was as simple and natural as marrying a maiden had its effect on him too. Had Helene herself shown the least sign of hesitation, shame, or secrecy, her cause would certainly have been lost. But not only did she show no signs of secrecy or shame, on the contrary, with good-natured naivete, she told her intimate friends, and these were all of Petersburg, that both the prince and the magnate had proposed to her, and that she loved both and was afraid of grieving either. A rumor immediately spread in Petersburg, not that Helene wanted to be divorced from her husband. Had such a report spread, many would have opposed so illegal an intention, but simply that the unfortunate and interesting Helene was in doubt of which of the two men she should marry. The question was no longer whether this was possible, but only which was the better match, and how the matter would be regarded at court. There were, it was true, some rigid individuals unable to rise to the height of such a question, who saw in the project a desecration of the sacrament of marriage, but there were not many such as these, and they remained silent, while the majority were interested in Helene's good fortune, and in the question which match would be the most advantageous. Whether it was right or wrong to remarry while one still had a husband living, they did not discuss, for that question had evidently been settled by people wiser than you or me, as they said, and to doubt the correctness of that decision would be to risk exposing one's stupidity and incapacity to live in society. Only Maria Dmitrievna Akrosimova, who had come to Petersburg that summer to see one of her sons, allowed herself plainly to express an opinion contrary to the general one. Meeting Helene at a ball, she stopped her in the middle of the room, and, amid general silence, said in her gruff voice, "So wives of living men have started marrying again. Perhaps you think you have invented a novelty? You have only been forestalled, my dear. It was thought of long ago. It is indeed done in all the brothels." And with these words, Maria Dmitrievna, turning up her wide sleeves with her usual threatening gesture, and glancing sternly round, moved across the room. Though people were afraid of Maria Dmitrievna, she was regarded in Petersburg as a buffoon, and so of what she said, little noticed, and repeated in a whisper the one coarse word she had used, supposing the whole sting of her remark to lie in that word. Prince Vasily, who of late very often forgot what he had said and repeated one and the same thing 100 times, remarked to his daughter whenever he chanced to see her, "Helene, I have a word to say to you," and he would lead her aside, drawing her hand downward. "I have heard of certain projects concerning, you know. Well, my dear child, you know how your father's heart rejoices to know that you have suffered so much, but, my dear child, consult only your own heart. That is all I have to say." And concealing his unvarying emotion, he would press his cheek against his daughter's, and then move away. Bilibin, who had not lost his reputation of an exceedingly clever man, and who was one of the disinterested friends so brilliant a woman as Helene always had, men friends who can never change into lovers, once gave her his view of the matter at a small and intimate gathering. "Listen, Bilibin," said Helene. She always called friends of that sort by their surnames. And she touched his coat sleeve with her white, beringed fingers. "Tell me, as you would a sister, what I ought to do. Which of the two?" Bilibin wrinkled up the skin over his eyebrows and pondered, with a smile upon his lips. "You are not taking me unawares, you know," said he. "As a true friend, I have thought and thought again about your affair. You see, if you marry the prince," here he meant the younger man, and he crooked one finger, "you forever lose the chance of marrying the other, and you will displease the court besides. You know there is some kind of connection. But if you marry the old count, you will make his last days happy. As the widow of the the prince would no longer be making une mésalliance by marrying you," said Bilibin, smoothing his forehead. "That's a true friend," said Helene, beaming, and again touching Bilibin's sleeve. "But I love them, you know, and don't want to distress either of them. I would give my life for the happiness of them both." Bilibin shrugged his shoulders, as much as to say that not even he could help with that difficulty. "Une marquise femme," that's what is called putting things squarely. She would like to be married to all three at the same time, thought he. "But tell me, how will your husband look at the matter?" Bilibin asked, his reputation being so well established that he did not fear to ask so naive a question. "Will he agree?" "Oh, he loves me so," said Helene, who for some reason imagined that Pierre too loved her. "He will do anything for me." Bilibin puckered his skin in preparation for something witty. "Even divorce you?" said he. Helene laughed. Among those who ventured to doubt the justifiability of the proposed marriage was Helene's mother, Princess Kuragina. She was continually tormented by jealousy of her daughter, and now that jealousy concerned a subject near to her own heart, she could not reconcile herself to the idea. She consulted a Russian priest as to the possibility of divorce and remarriage during a husband's lifetime, and the priest told her that it was impossible, and to her delight showed her a text in the Gospel which, as it seemed to him, plainly forbids remarriage while the husband is alive. Armed with these arguments, which appeared to her unanswerable, she drove to her daughter's early one morning, so as to find her alone. Having listened to her mother's objections, Helene smiled blandly and ironically. "But it says plainly whoever shall marry her that is divorced," said the old princess. "Ah, Mom, don't talk nonsense. You don't understand anything. In my position, I have duties," said Helene, changing from Russian, in which language she always felt that her case did not sound quite clear, into French, which suited it better. "But my dear," "Oh, Mamma, how is it you don't understand that the Holy Father, who has the right to grant dispensations—" Just then the lady companion who lived with Helene came in to announce that His Highness was in the ballroom and wished to see her. "No, tell him that I don't want to see him, that I'm furious with him, because I missed my word." "Countess, to every send mercy," said a fair-haired young man with a long face and nose as he entered the room. The old princess rose respectfully and curtsied. The young man who had entered took no notice of her. The princess nodded to her daughter and sidled out of the room. Yes, she is right, thought the old princess. All her convictions dissipated by the appearance of His Highness. She is right, but how is it that we in our irrecoverable youth do not know it? Yet it is so simple, she thought as she got in her carriage. By the beginning of August, Helene's affairs were clearly defined, and she wrote a letter to her husband, who, as she imagined, loved her very much, informing him of her intention to marry N.N., and of her having embraced the one true faith, and asking him to carry out all the formalities necessary for a divorce, which would be explained to him by the bearer of the letter. "And so I pray God to have you, my friend, in His holy and powerful keeping, your friend Helene." This letter was brought to Pierre's house when he was on the field at Borodino. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 233. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 232. Monkey see, monkey do. Individual behavior is often determined at the group level. This is part of Tolstoy's argument in terms of his theory of history, wherein he argues in the abstract for historical determinism. He believes that an unseen force moves the Russian invasion forward just at the time it does the Russian retreat from Moscow. In today's chapter, Tolstoy provides a concrete example of this group dynamic with Helene's decision to continue on her quest to divorce Pierre and marry the magnate or the young prince, or, hey, why not, both the magnate and the young prince. Helene might not be as stupid as Tolstoy says she is. Helene has, after all, expertly played upon the prejudices and beliefs of people in order to get her way. She's done this throughout the novel. She has manipulated many of the individual characters, Pierre, her father, Natasha, Bilibin. Today, however, her mark is much higher. Her mark is society itself. Helene understands that divorce will only be allowed if it receives the imprimatur of society at large. Lucky for her, then, that Russian society is perfectly willing to go along with her mischievous little plan. Quote, a rumor immediately spread in Petersburg, not that Helene wanted to be divorced from her husband. Had such a report spread, many would have been opposed to so legal an intention. But simply that the unfortunate and interested Helene was in doubt which of the two men she should marry. The question was no longer whether this was possible, but only which was the better match, and how the matter would be regarded at court. There were, it is true, some rigid individuals unable to rise to the height of such a question, who saw in the project a desecration of the sacrament of marriage. But there were not many such as these, and they remained silent, while the majority were interested in Helene's good fortune, and in the question which match would be the more advantageous. Whether it was right or wrong to remarry while one had a husband living they did not discuss, for that question had evidently been settled by people wiser than you or me, as they said, and to doubt the correctness of that decision would be to risk exposing one's stupidity and incapacity to live in society. End quote. Group dynamics like this can yield both positive and negative results. On the positive side, think of the brilliance of a sports team when the entire organization works well together. On the negative side, we have Abu Ghraib, where otherwise decent individuals, swayed by an evil groupthink, tortured and murdered people, even snapping happy thumbs-up pictures of themselves while doing so. The lesson of today's chapter is that if the individual is to preserve her virtue, she must remain vigilant against the potentially corrupting nature of larger society. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wasn't right about much, but perhaps it's best to keep in mind his words about conformity. I may not be better than other people, but at least I'm different. Daily meditation. The young character, which cannot hold fast to righteousness, must be rescued from the mob. It is easy, too easy, to side with the majority. Even Socrates, Cato, and Laelius might have been shaken in their moral strength by a crowd that was unlike them. So true it is that none of us, no matter how much he cultivates his abilities, can withstand the shock of faults that approach, as it were, with so great a retinue. Much harm is done by a single case of indulgence of greed. The familiar friend, if he be luxurious, weakens and softens us imperceptibly. The neighbor, if he be rich, rouses our covetousness. The companion, if he slanders, rubs off some of his rust upon us, even though we be spotless and sincere. What then do you think the effect will be on character when the world at large assaults it? Seneca, Letter 7 on Crowds. All right, so that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 232. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the show notes. Tomorrow, we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 233. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.